You're listening to the Fan Club Podcast, where two polar opposites experience each other's fandoms for the very first time.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fan Club Podcast. My name is Sarah.
This is Matthew.
And today is episode 34. We have some special guests here today. Say hello.
Hi, I'm Frances.
Hey, this is Kait again.
Yeah, so we are covering episodes 3 and 4 of Loki. We asked Frances and Kait to join us for the whole week, so you get the 6 of us, or 4 of us? I can't count. It's 4 of us. Unless we have 2
and our
extra
variants.
ghosts.
And our variants.
What are your thoughts, ladies, on 3 and 4 to begin with? Like these, because you were saying on Twitter, Frances, that 3 is your favorite episode, correct?
Yeah, episode 3 is my favorite episode of Loki. I know it's like kind of a controversial but brave opinion of people who like Loki. I know a lot of people love the last episode, and it's good for sure. I think it's my second favorite episode, but I just love this episode. I love that we get to learn more about Loki. We get to learn more about Sylvie. We get to learn who she is. And it's got some banging tunes, especially to kick it off with Haley Kiyoko's Demons, which was my song of the summer last year.
I mean, I think that 3 and 4 are really, they kind of continue that trend of like helping us keep us curious about everything, about where this is going. I kind of think about some of the Easter eggs that I follow, and it seemed like this was where they really started to really challenge things that have since branched out, and haha, pun. But at the same time, it kind of, like Frances said, we learn more about Sylvie, and Sylvie being such a rich character. Like, I was watching like episode 5, which I know is a tangent, but my dad, like, he saw that episode and he was like, she seems cool. And like, he hadn't even seen this buildup of her that we get to see in 3 and 4. And so I just feel like that's kind of where she's just a perfect character. And that's kind of what we start to see in 3. 5 is still my favorite episode, but 3 is a hot take from Frances for sure.
Like Kait said, like, she is a really rich character, and they did a really great job of like really building her out. And you know, she's the Loki variant, but she is very much her own person, and they really have her hit that point home several times throughout the season, and this is really where it starts.
I really love the way this episode looks. I was initially critical of like some of the more outer spacey stuff, like when we were in Guardians a little bit, just because I find it a little bit confusing. But I really love now that I have more of an established kind of worldview, I guess, of the MCU world. I love seeing these like new planets, and like I feel like almost all of them have like a different color palette, and like it's just, I don't know, I thought it was really cool. I love this, and I mean, I know it's not technically a planet, but I love the Void as well, and episode 6, and like I just love the way that this episode looks, and especially like the train bar that they're in.
Yes,
looks so cool. I was thinking it kind of looks like back in like beginning of the year when the Disney Wish, the new cruise ship came out. I was watching a bunch of like tour videos, and there's a Star Wars themed bar that looks a lot like that train car. And that's like immediately what I thought. I was like, oh, it looks like that Star Wars bar.
that's cool.
Just like the way that it's, the colors and everything. So yeah, the episode is called Lamentis. Is that how you say it? Lamentis. Yes. And it starts off with who I've been referring to as Lady Loki until we learn her name. But she and the kidnapped agent are out for drinks, and she's trying to get the location of the timekeepers. Yeah, and like she's really trying to like manipulate. What is her name?
C20.
C20. Yeah.
I was initially so confused when I was watching this scene, because I was like, what is going on? Like the enchantment aspect of Sylvie's powers like didn't even like register in my brain even after
I thought
you know
it was a
episode.
flashback at first.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, did she know C20 like on the main timeline? Like, what's going on? And then it's like she starts asking about the timekeepers, and I was like, oh.
I mean, I just feel like this was the first time that we even considered. I think one of the questions we talked about in episodes 1 and 2 was whether or not the TVA was like good. And I feel like her curiosity about the timekeepers and that kind of pursuit of finding the timekeepers kind of tells us, like, just from a story perspective, that there is a very real Wizard of Oz aspect to these timekeepers that could mean
I have multiple notes on that.
Yeah, it felt like that, where it's this whole idea of like she knows that these people have some sort of power here, but she's not really quite sure yet what she needs to know about them. And that's kind of where I always thought about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I have multiple notes on that, more in the later episodes. But I have multiple notes on, I was like, especially in the scene, not to like get ahead of ourselves, but like the scene where they're like going to see the timekeepers, and I was like, they finally reveal the secret about the timekeepers, and I'm like, oh, so it's a Wizard of Oz situation.
Yeah, and I feel like this is what planted that seed, but that fueled us as we pursue these timekeepers for sure.
But yeah, she's like really trying to manipulate this the C20 to give her the information about the timekeepers, which like no one even knows where they are, so like she's manipulating her for nothing.
It's kind of like the concept sometimes of like the gods, where we don't really know where they are. It's always like you pray up or something like that, or depending on like if there's Asgard, you know that they are at Asgard. It's kind of like you don't know which room they're at Asgard or anything specific. And so that's kind of where there is an element of C20 that is believing something that she hasn't even seen yet.
So Roxxon, the store that they're at, is another Roxxcart is another evil corporation in the Marvel. So kind of like Hammer or AIM, it's another one of those. In the comics, there's a bunch of other little Easter eggs, like Asgard, Vilmir, Ego, and Titan were all talked about in episode 2, but for different years.
This show, I think, does a really good job of sprinkling known things throughout. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Pixar in that way, where like they sprinkle little things that like if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't.
But it's not to where we feel like we are missing out. Like, I'm not missing out by not seeing that stuff and not necessarily having that recall associated with it. Like, it makes it more vibrant, I think, if you do. But at the same time, it's equally, like, beautiful, like you were saying, that makes it be where other people can come in easily and get hooked without knowing the granular details.
So they, basically, she arrives at Sylvie, Lady Loki. We don't know her name yet, but she arrives at the TVA and attacks all the guards, and Loki basically like they get into like a little tussle. And
I do want to make a note.
Yes.
This is one of Sylvie puts her hair up before she starts kicking ass. Sorry, Grandma. And it's one of the first times in the MCU that we see a woman put her hair up to get out of her eyes before she starts kicking butt. And it's like, yes, we're making strides.
That's one of my big things in action and any action sequence. I'm like, how are these women with these super long locks just like not putting their hair up? Like,
you guys need to go to a Soul Cycle class or like a Peloton class or whatever. They are always like the most like thick hair of all time, and they're just throwing it back and forth while like also giving a whole lecture on it.
I can't stand having my hair down, so I don't know how anybody does it, like in the regular, let alone like fighting.
I always have my hair. My coworkers have never seen my hair fully down. Like I will wear it down, but I always have it half up, half down. Like that's my go-to hairstyle, just because like, especially as a dancer, like I grew up, I hate having hair on my face. And like when I was a dancer, you can't have hair on your face because you have to emote and like tell the story of the dance. And so like I've never been one to like always have my hair fully down. And like, so when they like made the point to show Sylvie putting her hair up, I was like, yes, we're like, this is like, we've got women running the show. So there's more realistic things, like even just the 10 seconds that they took to show Sylvie putting her hair up out of her face. It's like, yes, that's huge. Obviously, Black Widow comes out around the same time that Loki is being released weekly last summer. And I think that was the second instance they showed maybe Yelena putting her hair up out of her face or something. And that was like the second instance and the first on like the big screen. And so it's just like we're finally making these strides. It's awesome to see.
I'm glad also that we have like these women that have far more intricate hairstyles now, that like even though they're wearing their hair up, it's not just a messy bun. Like right. I've seen pictures from Black Widow where they have these like intricate braids and things.
Oh yeah.
And like, obviously we got it a little bit in Black Panther, but like it's a different culture, so like it's a little different. But this is the first time that I've now that you're mentioning it, this is the first time we've really seen like literally anybody do it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even Tom Hiddleston with his luscious Loki locks, like he's hair flipping all over the place in this episode, which I love. I'm like, sir, you can also wear a man bun like you did in the training videos that we saw on the gram.
So yeah, Renslayer comes in and sends them through a portal to Lamentis 1 in the year 2077.
Loki and Sylvie are fighting, and Loki sends them before they get captured.
I thought Renslayer did it.
If Renslayer had her way, they would have been purged.
So Lamentis is a moon about to be destroyed.
Keep him with those apocalypses.
Yeah, he still has Morbius's
temp pad.
Mm-hmm.
And they just loaded it with every apocalypse they could think of.
And then we learn that Lady Loki's name is Sylvie, which I love that name, and you don't hear it very often. And I knew a girl in elementary school named Sylvie, and I've never met anybody else that has that name, and I always thought that girl was the coolest girl in the world, but I've never seen a character or a real person with that name since. So I think it's really cool.
And I mean, it's very feminine, because like later on we'll meet other Lokis, and I think the fact that she is a variant of Loki but with a different name is very important as well, because I feel like that kind of goes with this whole idea that we talked about a little bit in episode 2 of, can they have their own identity? Are they prone to being able to change? Her even changing the name, even if she is a variant of Loki, is some sort of growth, right?
So, in the comics, Sylvie is actually the Enchantress in the comics. Lady Loki in the comics is it's Loki just with long black hair. So all the Lokis, roughly, in the comics at least, look the same in different arcs or multiverses or whatever, but Sylvie is actually a different character in the comics. One of Thor's biggest villains. And teams up with Loki all the time to torment Thor.
So they go to this trailer where basically Sylvie gets like blasted by this woman, and
funny.
Loki tries to disguise himself as the woman's husband, and like she's not buying it. They basically learn that all the citizens are going on the Ark, which is like a train. Or is it a train? Yeah, it is a train. To evacuate.
Yeah, they head to the train, and we get probably the funniest scene in this entire show.
Well, before they get on the train, I think there's a really interesting little, it's like a background character says it, that they're saying they're only giving tickets to the wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like so fascinating to me that like I'm like making some social commentary here.
Or that fantasy reflects reality most of the time. I mean, see Titanic.
It gave me a little bit of like Hunger Games vibes, a little bit.
Kinda, yeah. The costuming is similar.
I was gonna say rich people getting special treatment, but I guess that's just life.
That's life, yeah.
I don't think that that's strictly a fantasy thing. Yeah, and so then we go into the Ark, the train, and this is when we get the scene in the bar, and we get this like really sweet dialogue scene between Sylvie and Loki, where she tells him she barely remembers her mother.
I love this scene from Loki's point of view when he's doing the fireworks in his hand and he's thinking about Frigga and how much he loves Frigga, and I'm just like, I love that Loki's just like a little mama's boy. Like he loves his mom so much.
So sweet. And because up until this point, I was like, I mean, I knew that Loki had a heart prior to this, but you don't see many moments of humanity with Loki.
Yeah, no, that's like any time that Loki talks about Frigga or is with Frigga, his shields are completely down. Like he's 100% his true authentic self, which I think really is helpful for this whole conversation on the train with them, because they talk about, past experiences and, how Sylvie doesn't really have any relationships to speak of because she's just been jumping from apocalypse to apocalypse her whole life, and sets the stage for, them both announcing that they're the first official queer characters in the MCU, and, verbally, because we know Valkyrie is from Ragnarok, but there's no like verbal confirmation of it.
Yeah.
I was really excited to see Loki confirm that he is bisexual. That was fun.
Mm-hmm. But did you notice what was around him?
What?
Yep.
Was it the bicolors?
Yeah.
Yeah, the lighting in the train is pink, blue, and purple.
Love that. Love that.
Or his outfit is blue and there's pink and purple lights.
I just really appreciate, like the MCU really doesn't have to go that hard, frankly. But, like, for them to be such a huge IP and for them to do that explicitly, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it was the director. Her exact tweet was, from the moment I joined Loki or the show, it was very important to me and my goal to acknowledge Loki was bisexual. It was part of who he is and who I am now. I know this is a small step, but I'm happy, heart's full to say that this is now canon.
That's a really big deal because bisexuality doesn't get absolutely none, especially in these large IPs.
Right.
They talk about it a little bit in Bros. If you've seen that movie, they talk about how at one point they talk about how it's the one that people don't believe the most, and so I think that's also why
bisexuality is never talked about except for like in maybe a niche Netflix movie that nobody watches, and especially not in men. So it's a really big deal that this major IP did this. And I know that there will be some people, hopefully not listening to this, but I know that there will be some people who watch that scene and roll their eyes at it.
Right.
But I'm just saying, it means a lot to me as a person, and I know it means a lot to a lot of other bisexuals. So,
and Tom Hiddleston is one of the executive producers on the show, and he's talked in interviews about like how excited he was to tell this part of Loki's story too, because I have it in my notes and I didn't really get to touch on it in Monday's episode, but because at the point that they started filming, Tom Hiddleston had been playing Loki for almost 10 years, and so he did these like Loki classes for everybody and would just like do Loki lectures. And he was teaching everyone everything he knew about Loki. And so this is a part of Loki's story that he has even admitted himself that he was like really gung-ho and excited to share. And so just having, like you said, having it talked about as with a male character, and then even the actor himself being like, this is a huge deal. We're excited to do this, and, verbally confirm it and be that representation for people is, again, more strides being made across the board in this show.
Especially because on his file it said fluid, so that could have been their moment. Like in episode 1, it says his gender is fluid, or his sexuality is fluid, I believe it says too. And it could have been where they just go, okay, that's our check. No, but having them vocally say it is what makes it resonate for sure.
What?
We have there's a lot of references to the older Marvel movies. There's a Thor one about to come up. You want to take a guess at it?
What?
When he throws his cup on the ground or whatever.
I had a note about this song, this Asgardian song that he sings. First of all,
love it.
Tom Hiddleston can sing.
Yes, he can. It's beautiful.
Somebody needs to cast this man in a Broadway show.
He's been on Broadway. That's how he met his baby mama.
Yeah, and I think he's
iconic.
Shakespearean trained also.
But yeah, he went to the Eton School, which is where William and Harry went growing up, and then I think he went to like the Royal College of London or something for acting. But like he is very classically trained.
Some people are really suspicious of Loki, and they get off the train. They get thrown off the train.
Well, they get super drunk. It's like the level of intoxication.
Loki gets super drunk.
Yeah. Well, it's
Sylvie is upset with him.
I do love what I do love about this. And I know, Sarah, you might not have gotten to this yet, is they talk about intoxication and, like, She-Hulk at some point. Yeah, and so you'll see that I like the fact that they're actually exploring this as, like, different kind of, like, people who have superpowers or things along those lines, how they process alcohol. Because that means that Loki, as Loki, does not process alcohol that well, which is an interesting thing for a god.
Well, also, because in, is it Age of Ultron, Thor has that like special liquor that like is Asgardian liquor that like affects Stan Lee differently than like a typical liquor would. So this liquor was from space. So who knows if it's stronger than regular liquor?
But he's still a god, though. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, Loki is not a god.
He's the god of mischief. So does being the god of mischief, do you want them to get?
Technically, Loki is not a god in the MCU. Technically, because he's not Odin's blood. He's a Jotun. Yeah, so he's a normal person, technically.
How does he do magic?
He was trained by Freya, or Frigga.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is how he was. At least in the MCU. In real Norse mythology, he is Odin's child.
So, yeah, I have a note here that says they want to hijack the Ark. Am I reading that correctly?
The Ark's called the ship. The ship's called the Ark. Giant spaceship.
Yes.
It's called the Ark. They want to steal the spaceship to power the Tempest.
Oh, and this scene where they're running through this city, where it's like this long tracking shot.
It's pretty cool.
Apparently, it's not all one shot. It's like very clever cuts.
Yeah, it's all. I saw. Yeah.
I will say, going back to the fight on the train, I love. There's a shot of Sylvie taking her little helmet thing with the Loki horn off, and she uses it to like stab someone with the horn, which is a throwback to Loki doing the exact same thing on the Bifrost in Ragnarok. Sylvie has a meltdown about the TemPad being broken, and she like blows off steam, and it's a throwback. It's like a mirror of Loki's meltdown in the Dark World when he has a temper tantrum I think it's right after he finds out that Frigga died. And he's really upset. So I love those like little touches of like, they're very much variants of each other, like tying these things together, just really highlighting like how similar they are, even though we know they're different.
And Sylvie does not have her helmet anymore for the rest of the show also, which
I
like that.
She has like a little horn broken off.
No, the helmet's gone.
Really?
She used her helmet as a weapon.
Oh, that's right. So the leading up to this, like she had like one broken horn, and then now she doesn't have the crown thing anymore.
Her crown thing's gone.
Yeah, I do remember last year seeing a fair amount of people dressing up as Sylvie for Halloween.
I didn't go anywhere for Halloween, but I bought a little Sylvie crown, so I have one.
They try to get on the ship, and it blows up.
I love right before they do the like pseudo one-shot fight scene. Leading up to the spaceship, Sylvie asks like, how can we trust each other, or can we trust each other? And he immediately says, we do, and you can, because he knows that she's questioning whether or not she can trust him. Like they're just like so in sync with each other. Like he's saying, yes, I trust you. You can trust me. We trust each other, but also like hitting home, like you really can trust me. He wants her to trust him. And then,
which, if you think about the fact that this is Loki from 2012, year 2012, that has had this much growth happen in such a short amount of time. And again, you call back to Renslayer thinking that you can't have a Loki change at all. Like he has very much quickly learned that loyalty is something that he does possess, and he wants it to be something that people think of in relationship to his image, which is mind-blowing, really, and when it comes down to this whole thing, because we saw multiple movies where he didn't change. So this whole this whole chaos has created also an opportunity for him to really accept the only thing he truly believed, which is that he can only trust himself. And Loki is a Loki. Or Sylvie is a Loki.
Loki apparently might have stolen a time stone earlier in episode 1. Because he made a building reverse damage. After when the ship broke, sent that shockwave, destroyed a couple buildings, and somehow he reversed the buildings falling on him.
That was the only stone he held when he went through the drawer, other than the Tesseract.
So, do you think he stole that time stone? Because Loki, at 2012 Loki, would have stolen that stone. He would have stolen something, because that was Loki before his change, technically. So,
I didn't notice that, but yeah, I think it could be possible. It would be something that he just had in his pocket, and he was like, oh, I can use this, let's go. And it's really the only explanation. Oh, he definitely knows what they all are.
That's the thing. He didn't even know what the Tesseract was.
No, but he knew he was part of Thanos' grand plan. And he watched the whole thing. Remember? He watched the Endgame, his death on Endgame.
But he would have stolen it before that video, though. I think is when he stole it.
He would have stolen it. He might not have known what it was. It was green. Green's his color. And so that would have been the one I think he would naturally have been drawn to, other than the Tesseract. And it would be the one thing that they weren't expecting him to have on his body even. But we know he has pockets because that's how he holds the temp pad away from Mobius. So I could see it being something that he grabbed, not knowing what it was, but then after watching the video, he connected the dots because he is that kind of person that processes things.
So that's the end of episode 3.
Is it this episode or the one before where they also discussed that every person in the TVA is a variant that's working there?
That's 5. That's 4. That's 4.
Okay, it's 4. Okay. I was like, it's one of the 2 that we're talking about. I know that much. It's all combined here. So
episode 4 is called the Nexus event. It opens with the TVA kidnapping a little girl who I immediately clocked was Sylvie. Because, one, the room that she's in looks like Asgard. And 2, this little girl that they kidnap is brunette. Does Sylvie have access to peroxide?
That is an internet question that has been plaguing the world for over a year.
Because I know that hair colors can change naturally, sure. But not like that. But the girl has a whole balayage, okay?
But it could have been over hundreds of years living in apocalypses, living outside. Could have just naturally sun bleached.
She can also change her appearance. She can change her appearance. So it could be something where it's like in Harry Potter, where she just chose that she liked her hair with that color more than she liked her hair any other color, and it's a permanent illusion.
To be fair, also, do you think that she carries around a curling iron?
But again, she can just make it look however she wants it to look, because she's sitting there going, like, this is the best outfit for me, and, like, she didn't need the people, and so that's all just an illusion on her, and she's actually walking down naked. That's my hot take.
Yeah. I also want to know, like, what exactly is Sylvie's Nexus event, because I don't think it would be, she mentions, like, it's because she was born the goddess of mischief, and I'm like, but I don't think that's it, because if she was born the goddess of mischief, they would have pruned her right at the start, not let her get 8 years old. But they're also, Lokis are gender fluid, so were they just like waiting for her to turn into a male? Like, I want to know. I feel like it's got to be that she was playing with like a Valkyrie toy set. She like expressed interest in being like a Valkyrie, thus being good and not bad.
Maybe, because it does look like the Thor Love and Thunder Lego set. Maybe she
didn't know they had Legos in Asgard.
That's the thing.
She came to 2022, picked up a Lego set, and went back to Asgard. That's why they pruned her.
Or maybe talking about Valkyrie, since Valkyrie was already dead in her timeline, technically. Because I
feel like it's just because she wanted to be a Valkyrie, which are the, I feel like that's got to be what it is.
As we learned in Ragnarok. He wanted to be
Thor,
a Valkyrie, but
Thor was already going to be good.
Yeah.
Lokis aren't necessarily good.
But anyone who loves Star Wars, the new Star Wars, or Walking Dead would recognize young Sylvie. She played a young Rey, and she was Judith Grimes' daughter. Or she plays Judith Grimes in The Walking Dead.
Never seen it.
And a young Rey in Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker.
Never seen it.
She plays young Rey, apparently.
I mean, there are a handful of actresses that are like the young version of everybody. I mean, look at McKenna Grace. So
she is making bank.
Sylvie escapes And then Renslayer goes to the Timekeeper, and there is this quote, I think it's by the Timekeeper, that they say, the universe wants to break free, so it manifests chaos.
In itself, though, again, makes the existence of variance part of the universe. Why would it be something that then we need to protect against? Unless it's all about the last episode, basically, in which case that whole concept of the sacred timeline and the variants branching off of it are controlled rather than not an actual product of the universe.
I have my own theory on Renslayer and the person at the end. I have my own theory about that I'll talk about at that time.
My other question is, how old is Renslayer? Because she's Sylvie's hunter, but she's also, again, the TVA is outside of space and time, but it's also like, I have questions.
In the end of the series, they go to like her like original life.
And I'm guessing she could be in her 30s, because I'm guessing once you go to the TVA, you don't age anymore.
Yeah.
It was Ohio 2018. I just scrolled down in my notes.
So I'm guessing she was maybe in her late 20s, early 30s at that time. I'm just guessing.
So I wonder if it's like a...
But I wonder what her thing was.
I wonder if it's a situation where like you cease to age past the age where you like became a variant.
Were blipped, essentially.
Right. But she's also been chasing Sylvie for like hundreds of years at this point, because Sylvie was taken in at like 8 or 9, looks like.
I wonder if she counts how many times like she goes back to like different branches or different timelines or whatever, as like have been chasing her for hundreds of years.
I feel like she knows, because I think that that's just their day to day, because I don't think the concept of time in the TVA is something that is necessarily like something that where it progresses to be where you'd recognize it, but it's just, that's the only life that they know. If they don't know what a fish is, their day-to-day is literally their day-to-day forever and ever.
So there's a whole question in this episode of like, what makes a Loki?
What makes a Loki act like a Loki? Great
independence, authority, and style.
I mean, I think this is, I think it's kind of going back to that first episode in a way of how he kept on saying he was just a mischievous scamp. That was kind of his way of how he defined himself. And then that was where Mobius kept on being like, but do you enjoy killing people? And it's like this whole concept of him being like, no, I don't really enjoy killing people. I'm trying to be mischievous. And even like the D.B. Cooper callback, it was all apparently a bet with Thor that got him to be D.B. Cooper, right? And like he didn't even get the money. The money ended up because he got the whole, I don't know, rainbow thing. I don't know whatever it's called. Bifrost. Yeah, that's it. Because that picked him up. It was kind of one of those things where it's just like he didn't even like see the fruits of that whole labor kind of situation. So I think a lot of who he is as a Loki is honestly defined by his relationship with Thor.
That's what I love about the What If series, because it's a different type of Loki.
True.
Because we see the Frost Giant version of Loki and the version of Thor without Loki as his brother.
So the TVA captures them, and then they throw Loki through a portal to Asgard in a bad memory prison that's on a loop.
I need the bottle episode of Loki and Sif on a date. I need that.
Yes.
Side quest, random bottle episode. I need Loki and Sif on a date. I need to know what went down.
This whole thing is like such, I was going to say such a great way to torture somebody.
It is.
I guess that's the best way to put it.
But it is torture. Again, this is kind of the thing that, like, if the TVA is the good guys, why do they keep torturing him? Like, putting him through the past of having to relive his faults and then also somehow leave him the paperwork to being able to see how he dies, which in itself is, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Big Fish. That's, like, the whole idea of Big Fish, is, like, when you're going to die is sometimes a good thing, but it could also be a horrible thing. And, like, in this case, I think it's this whole situation where he literally knows he's not on the timeline, and yet they keep on abusing him, even though he also was trying to help a little bit. Like him and Mobius had a little bit of a bromance going on there, but yet they still put him in this torture chamber. It's like, why would he ever trust these people?
I thought that this scene really reminded me of the scene in Doctor Strange where he goes to see Dormammu. Just the time loop aspect of things.
Yeah.
I will say one thing. They say it in a lot of those Easter egg things I've talked about, is actually that Dormammu scene is like the scene that has created the most chaos to this entire situation here, because of the fact that he was able to completely create all these alternate situations. The fact that he's already used that skill in the past is kind of why now the fact that we're addressing these timelines makes it like, why wasn't that a Nexus event? Like, is that really a sacred timeline if he goes on like a million different ways of fighting Dormammu before he figures it out? Like, how is that okay?
Because that was a different dimension. Because that was the dark dimension that is out of space and time.
Oh, the dark dimension is out of space and time?
Kind of like the mirror dimension is out of space and time. It's just its own, like the dark dimension is owned by Dormammu. He's the only living entity there.
Okay, so it's kind of like the Watcher? Kind of like the Watcher is in his own dimension?
Yes, he's just the evil. It's kind of like the quantum realm also, how they can take stuff out of the quantum realm and go into the quantum realm without having any repercussions. Any of those little pocket dimensions, I think it's out of the TVA jurisdiction, technically. How Peter was able to trap Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension with having no repercussion, or besides being yelled at by Doctor Strange. But that's why they can break different cities and stuff in the mirror dimension, like versus the Callius and Caecilius and Ancient One fight, without causing Nexus events.
So there's another scene between Mobius and Renslayer having vibes.
Bow chicka wow wow!
When did say having vibes in Game of Thrones? Having a vibe?
Yes, you can
They're
do
vibing.
Game of Thrones. They were vibing. They went into the other room to vibe.
Drinking game for Game of
I
Thrones.
don't mean it in a euphemistic sense right now, though.
Drinking game for Game of Thrones. Finish your drink every time you have to say, it's a vibe.
It's a vibe. And then Mobius goes to interrogate Loki, and I've watched a significant amount of cop shows. I knew he was trying to manipulate him, like, almost immediately. I was like, this feels like a very standard interrogation. Especially the way he's, like, telling him, like, we've already pruned her. We already got her.
Yeah.
Right.
See if he would break for the plan, but he didn't even know Sylvie's plan.
They also feel like middle school boys talking. Do you like her? Like once Mobius realizes, oh, Loki might actually like her. We're not just messing around here. It feels like middle school boys talking about like their first crush. Like, do you like her? I don't know if I like her. Like,
and again, he's the one that had the hypothesis that Loki's can change, and so I think part of the interrogation is finding out if he has changed. Again.
And this is where we get the plot twist that everyone working for the TVA are variants.
Totally just base C20s or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Yep. 20.
C20 thing with it.
Yeah. And I want to know what Sylvie shows B15 to, like, I think B15 already kind of had an inkling, because I don't think C20 is dead. I think Ravona's lying. I don't know where C20 is, but I don't think she's dead. I think she'll come back.
In some holding cell somewhere.
Like the one that B15.
C20 again, do we?
No.
Mm-mm.
That's why I believe that Ravonna killed her after that whole interrogation when the
I don't think anyone's killed. I don't think anyone actually is killed in this show. I think that everything seems to be taking somebody. Well, I think everything takes somebody to some other like dimension.
I think
She might be hiding in the void somewhere, or lost in the void somewhere.
I don't think she would be hiding.
I think she's in one of those cells like B15 was in.
Yeah.
Or like Loki was in this whole tormenting cell. I just think that there's no reason to get rid of people in this world. I think everybody holds a little bit of purpose, and I think that finding out that they're all actually variants proves that like the whole concept of protecting the sacred timeline also seems to be some sort of like indentured servitude, right?
Yeah.
If these are all variants,
they're so reprogrammed to not remember their previous life. So C20 has probably just been put back in like a reprogramming situation and like transferred to a different division, not reporting to Ravonna.
Who was the first one? I wonder. The first TVA worker.
We'll have to ask somebody.
I mean, my hypothesis on that one would be Ravonna, honestly. She seems to know the most.
We'll ask Kevin Feige when he comes on the pod.
But there was another.
Can't wait.
There was another judge before her.
But that's only if she couldn't possibly be reset. This whole concept we're talking about is if C20 ends up actually being someone who's being reprogrammed right now, I still think it's possible that the behavior of the variants in different situations creates the best type of servant.
Because she's trying to figure out who's in charge also.
I think she knows.
I think this
She's
is
gotta
also
know.
planting a seed for season two
Yeah.
that I feel like it's because I have a note here that says I smell an uprising, and it gave me very like Hunger Games vibes in that way of like they're gonna try to overthrow not the government. I guess it's not the government, but
the TVA.
Yeah.
You know who I think they'll take down first, though, Sarah? I think it's Miss Minutes, your buddy that you like. You're the only person that likes Miss Minutes. I think she's evil. I also believe that Baby Yoda's evil, so I might be bad at my whole measurements of this, but yes.
Yeah, Kait has a theory that Baby Yoda's evil, and I don't agree with it.
I think Miss Minutes.
I think Miss Minutes is programmable.
I don't think she's programmable.
No, because okay, we'll get to it in the next episode, but there's a moment where she kind of sounds like she's speaking through somebody else. Like she's like kind of the mouthpiece for somebody else.
I think she's a mouthpiece.
And I feel like she's almost like an Alexa or
very scary Alexa.
Sorry if we just to anyone listening, if we just like alerted your
Demon box to turn on.
Alexa, stop.
Renslayer is manipulating Mobius, and like she's manipulating him hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which makes me question if they were vibing, or if she's been manipulating him the whole time to think they were vibing, because then she just prunes him without any hesitation.
Because I think her end goal was just to get Sylvie. She didn't care about the other variants. I think she just wanted to get Sylvie back.
Yeah.
So she was just going to use whoever to get it. Fake, be nice to whoever could help her further her goals. Kind of like Loki, for example, would use whoever to further his goals. Kind of like Hawkeye or the dude scientist in Thor 1. Selvig.
Yes.
Renslayer acts almost identical to how Loki acted in the Avengers movie. Would just use whoever to further his own goals.
Is Renslayer a Loki?
Oh my god, I was about to ask that. The TVA is full of Lokis. They're all Lokis.
Plot twist. Wouldn't that be the plot twist of a century?
That would be really
like
I just predicted it. And we just predicted
more than Mephisto. More than Mephisto.
I don't know if I like that, to be honest. I feel like
I don't think that's what they would do. I think because Renslayer's based
her
on
being
a character in the comics.
I could see her being a Loki.
But she acts like immature Loki.
Yeah.
I just think she could be, because I think it's also, again, it's the whole idea of narcissism that they talk about this episode, though. And us talking about this, like, she could also hate herself in a way. You know, it's like, you love yourself as a narcissist, but you also, like, you're so critical of yourself, too. And so it could be one of those situations where, because they've combined characters in the past from the comics. And so this could easily be something where she's rooted in the comics, but at the same time, if we made this plot twist of her actually being a Loki, then that could actually be something that would allow her the ability to kind of fuel that uprising that y'all talked about earlier, too. Because I think she would be the hardest one to flip, right?
Sylvie shows B-15 her previous life.
Which is really cool that she can do that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because she just goes into their brain.
She just opens up a door, doesn't she?
Well, and I think this is...
Her.
Yeah, this is also the start of something that I know we'll talk more about in episode 5, is that certain Lokis have a little bit different level of development happening. And so that's something that, like, well, we've seen our Tom buddy, who is also a Loki, obviously. We've seen him imitate people in the past and, like, do those kinds of projections. I don't think we've ever seen him completely remind somebody of something. Like, that's kind of a different level of development for Sylvie's character, who, and it's probably one of those things that, if we think about a lot of these situations which he has developed this mischievous from, is a lot of it comes from that fear of a situation, it seems a lot like. And that's kind of what we see in that first episode in his callbacks is like, he had this grand idea, but at the same time, I mean, he was just going for middle, like Asgard, right? He wasn't going Midgard. He wasn't trying to take over Asgard at that point. Maybe eventually, but that was never his goal. He wasn't trying to take his brother's world.
Yeah. I do have a note here that says C20 is dead, but I don't know if that's confirmed.
Ravana's TemPad, when Mobius steals it, says she is, but I don't think she is. We didn't see her die, so I think she'll come back.
And then she prunes Mobius, so life is not a highway, apparently.
No jet ski McQueen.
Sorry, had to bring that
with Loki holding him from behind. We're just going to ride off into the sunset, you guys. That was what we were all cheering for this whole time, right?
Sylvie asks what her Nexus event was, and Renslayer says she doesn't remember. She knows, right?
I'm calling BS.
I don't trust a word that Renslayer says this entire show. That is my rule of thumb right now until she proves me otherwise.
So she may actually be one of the first people to work for the TVA. She was captured by He Who Remains. So she was captured by who we'll find out in the next episode. And her hunter name was A23.
I was wondering what her hunter name was.
A23, which, fun fact, she was introduced in Avengers Avengers issue 23. So that's why she was coined A23.
I wonder if it's like A1 to, I don't know, 1,000, and then like they started B.
She's been in the TVA for eons. That's what they're saying. So eons.
So I wonder if the person they found in 2018 was actually her, or
it
just
was her.
Like
that was her nexus point. They didn't say what was her nexus point, but that's just what it says. In the branch of timeline, a variant of Rebecca Torment became part of a nexus event and was captured by He Who Remains.
Torment.
It
looks French to me.
So,
if you all could choose your hunter number, what would it be?
I don't know. Does the lower down the alphabet mean you're like lesser?
No, it's just when you were captured.
I'd go like S7 because it's like the first letter of my name, and then my birthday is a 7. So,
I mean, I'd go with H because I go by my middle name, but my first name starts with an H. And then I'd go with 13 because I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan, and James Harden fan, and Steve Nash fan. I don't like Odell Beckham Jr. But yeah, there's a lot of sports people that are 13. So.
What about you, Francis?
I'm sticking with F because it's a letter that is not represented well in anything. I can never find my name on anything in a gas station. But I don't know what number. That's a good question. Maybe 9 because that's the day I was born. So that was a good thing. Good call.
You?
Or I could be 17 because that was the day that my dog was born and I miss him.
What would you do?
M18 for my first letter and the day I was born. I don't know.
Really?
It's like we turn this into a game where it's like almost like if you think about like your porn star name or whatever, right? It's like the street you grew up on and like whatever the name of your first pet or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So your hunter name is your first initial and the date you were born.
I like it.
So everybody, if you are listening to this podcast, add your hunter name into the comments somewhere. Tweet at us.
So there's another fan theory that our 2012 Loki is the 1130th Loki that they variant.
Yes, because that's his number. That's what I was thinking too.
People are guessing L for Loki. 1130.
1129. Sylvie was still not pruned.
I mean, we can say that he's not the last pruned, or he wasn't pruned either, because there are a ton of Lokis that we'll meet in the next episode. I mean, we meet a few of them in the post-credits episode.
He was Sylvie was technically pruned.
Yeah, she pruned herself.
Yeah,
right. But I mean, like up until this point,
in general,
if you were numbering them based off of them being discovered and pruned, Sylvie's still existing.
Or maybe he's just the 11,130th Loki in existence.
It's a lot of Loki.
Real Loki, though.
Will the real Loki please stand up?
So they go to the Timekeepers, and B-15 comes to help, and they have this whole like battle scene, and Sylvie decapitates a Timekeeper. We find out that they're robots.
Yeah.
So it's some Wizard of Oz stuff in here.
Who is the man behind the curtain?
But think about this also from that first episode again. I think the first episode's super rich. That's why I kind of call it back so much. When he's going through that metal detector kind of thing, where if it was a robot, it would have killed him. That now means something totally different now in this context, because were robots. And so it's like this whole thing where it's just like robots in general are definitely different than they appear in this world.
And then Renslayer, what's the word? She prunes
Loki as he is about to confess his love for Sylvie, and it's very upsetting. And then
I legit was like, did they just kill off the main character? Like in the middle of the dang season?
Well, it's like,
did you know to keep watching the credits?
He wakes up and asks, "Is this hell?" When he wakes up
to multiple Lokis.
Yeah, and he sees multiple.
So it's the first scene. It's the first scene in the next episode. Yeah,
it is. But it was something where, like,
camera angle. Yeah.
If you were watching live that night at 2 a.m. or whatever, for like me, it was definitely where I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, because you were wondering what happened. Did they just kill off the main character? But then,
and to that point, a lot of how the MCU shows on Disney Plus to this point had been positioned, especially after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was like a passing of the torch. And so it was this like 30-second, 45-second, however long the credits run, of like, oh my God, they really are passing the torch. It's Sylvie is Loki now. Like, Sylvie's our Loki now. And so there was just like kind of not panic, because like we mentioned earlier in this episode, like, Sylvie's a very rich, likable character you root for or you want to. And so it was just like the credits start and you're like, okay, well, we really are passing a torch, and we're passing it earlier on than like when Falcon got to become Captain America. Like, this is happening. And then the post-credits scene shows up and we've got 4 new Lokis.
And for Frances, this was a sigh of relief, so she could keep watching Tom on the screen. She was like, "I love Sylvie, my girl, but
well, I legit thought that they were, because there are a handful of media that does take a risk and kills their main character.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think Harry Potter. I don't think Harry Potter necessarily counts because he does come back.
No,
but
yeah, I wouldn't.
There are a handful that do.
Game of Thrones, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's a really bold choice to do, but I was like, one, they had already, at this point that I had already watched it, they had already announced Loki season 2, so I was like, unless it's about Sylvie, they're not going to kill him off. Also, he is so beloved in this fandom. I was just like, that's a really bold move there. Thankfully, they did not fully kill him off.
And one thing to say about that, though, too, is I was just confirming this. It was written by the same person who does a lot of Rick and Morty. And, like, Loki as a whole has been written by the same guy. His name is Michael Waldron. He often served as a writer for Rick and Morty, always a producer. But what's really important about this thing, and kind of what we just talked about there, is in Rick and Morty, they have a lot of scenes where you think that something's going to end. And it's actually just like this whole circle of events and takes you back in time to where it starts and things. And I feel like this event makes a very clear, it is very clearly aligned with a season of Rick and Morty, because this is kind of the moment where it's like, oh no, how are they actually going to get out of this? Because this doesn't make sense as a possible getting out of this situation. And that's where I felt like this was probably the most reflective of that show.
Yeah, so that is the end of this episode. What are your final thoughts on these 2 episodes of the show?
Just so good. They're Loki is still, I think I mentioned it in Monday's episode. Loki's like in the top tier. It's my favorite MCU show that's come out on Disney Plus. Even, I've watched everything except Werewolf by Night and the Groot short episodes at this point. And I just don't see much topping it until season 2 of Loki. So they've really done such a good job with it. And, we've already talked about the aesthetics, and I've talked about the music some, and it's just top to bottom. I think they've really killed it with this show so far.
What about you, Kait?
I think the word I'd kind of encapsulate both of these episodes with is momentum. And I mean, obviously physically they're the arc moving, but at the same time, I think that the thing that like this felt was that it was really picking up steam to get us to a point where it's like, how is this going to be resolved, right? Like, well, those first 2 episodes were really heavy hitters. We talked about that. They were very engaging as an audience. But these 2 ones were the ones where I think kind of what Frances was saying, like, oh my gosh, are they going to replace Sylvie? Or are they going to replace Loki with Sylvie? Okay, that would kind of parallel some of the other stuff we've seen. Then having the spoil at the very end, the teaser at the end, or stinger, I guess, really makes you go, oh my gosh, okay, we don't know what's really going on here. And honestly, Mobius dying was really, or being pruned at the time, was really a big moment as someone who had kind of grown to really think that like Owen Wilson is the only person that could play that character. Like, he had knocked it out of the park. And there was a feeling, kind of like you talked about, Sarah, on episode 1, or was that, are we sure Owen Wilson's the right cast for this person? And like, he had owned that role. You believed him. He had that kind of relationship with Renslayer. Like, you really had already attached yourself to so many of the supporting cast at this point that I think that like him getting pruned, then Loki getting pruned, like there was so much that happened in a short period of time, it felt like. But at the same time, I now was already attached. They didn't need to give me this huge backstory that we get later on Renslayer. Like, at that point, we get that later. We didn't need it now. And that's the perfect way of doing that timeline, too. So I felt like they had the right way of giving us this feeling. And, like, also the twist of variants being all the TVA agents was also really important, for sure.
They're building up for something massive in the next 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I've liked my favorite show still so far is Falcon Winter Soldier, just because it was the closest to how all the other MCU's movies went.
My favorite's still WandaVision. I love WandaVision so much. I love the campiness. I just love the cinematography of that show. I talked at length about it.
Yes, you did.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. We look forward to chatting with you guys about the last 2 episodes on Friday's episode. And, yeah. So, y'all have a great day. And we will talk to you guys in the next one.
Bye.
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 If you would like to send us any feedback or any messages, you can follow us over on Instagram at thefanclub_podcast or on Twitter at fanclub_podcast. Or you can discuss each episode with us over on our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/thefanclubpodcast. And make sure that you tune in every Marvel Monday.